Hey everyone, welcome to the Investor Spotlight. Today's spotlight is on Tyson Swain. Tyson, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you, Wayne?
I'm awesome. So you've been off for a couple weeks?
Yep, been off for a couple weeks, parental leave. Had a new daughter born in June, so was able to take some time off work and have a few weeks at home and enjoy some time with her and my wife.
That's awesome, Matt. And I saw the cute pictures of Halloween with the chef and the pasta there. It was pretty good.
Yeah, there's spaghetti
That's
and
awesome.
meatballs, and then she was a little sheep as well, a little lamb. So
That's awesome.
it's Halloween.
And what do you do for work again? I know, but for the listeners and the watchers, what do you do for work?
Full-time job, power engineer, work in water treatment at a large plant in Fort McMurray, Alberta. Been working full-time up here for just over 6 years now. Focus on investing in Edmonton and a few other communities in Alberta.
And you got a bunch in Canmore, I want to say Canmore, right?
Canmore, Sylvan Lake, and then in the last year and a half, we've been really focusing on Edmonton.
Right on. And why did you choose Edmonton?
Edmonton, we may move there in a few years. We get tired of the Fort McMurray. But Edmonton, strong market. There's lots of investors there. It's a more diverse economy, strong rental market, and there's really good cash flow.
Yeah. And so when did you start investing in real estate? I can't remember.
We bought our primary residence 2015, and then in the spring of 2016, we started investing, bought a single family home, and then from then on, we've been buying 1 or 2 properties a year. Started in the creative side September 2019 after a course with Barry and Donna.
Which one was that?
It was the AFS one in Red Deer.
Oh, that's right.
Full day AFS one.
Yeah, that was a gooder.
Yeah. So that's kind of kickstarted the creative side. And then been focusing on that, AFS, and JV too.
Right on, man. Right on. And so you just completed your first AFS deal. And, we're really interested in hearing more about it. I know a little bit about it, but I haven't really gotten deep into how you found it and all the details of it. So do you want to maybe just give a very brief introduction to the deal, and then we can ask some more questions about it?
For sure. So deal we just closed on, we closed October 1st. It's a legally suited house in Edmonton on the north end, triple car garage, suited, legalized, all that jazz. I was running just a basic Kijiji ad throughout the summer. Just said, hey, I'm looking for an investor that's selling an investment property. If you're willing to sell, let's have a conversation. Just simple. It was like 3-4 lines. The seller reached out to me. She had a couple properties that she wanted to sell. Sent me an Excel spreadsheet, had all the info, and we just kind of went from there.
And it was just as simple as a Kijiji ad with a couple lines.
It was simple, like so basic. We're looking to buy an investment property at Edmonton. We're interested in townhouses, legally suited homes, or older bungalows that could be suited. And that's all it was. Literally just basic. And that just drove a lot of traffic to us. And it was just every couple of days, just refresh that ad, put it up, and had lots of interest in people that were selling.
Nice.
And,
so before I get it, go ahead. Sorry, I'll let you finish.
I was just saying we just weeded through the replies that we got. There's lots that were no good, don't waste any time on them, and then there was definitely some that were worth looking at. So we had a conversation with each of those sellers, and then just focused on one deal that we wanted.
Nice. So before I get into like the seller's motivation and the details of that particular deal, what led you to putting that Kijiji ad out, looking for townhouses or suited houses or houses that could be suited? What's your motivation for looking for an agreement for sale like that?
The reason we wanted to do an agreement for sale or a private deal, more focused on the agreement for sale. That was my goal for 2020, was to close on an AFS. I didn't want to eat up any more of my financing room at the banks. If we do leave Fort McMurray, we buy a property for us to live in Edmonton. I didn't want to use up more financing room. So I figured AFS was the best way to do that.
Nice. So it wasn't necessarily the money issue. It was more so about just having someone carry the financing for you, because obviously you and I and everybody knows mortgages are almost more valuable than cash these days in investing.
Yeah, that was huge. The money down wasn't a big sticking point. It was avoiding the banks and not eating into that financing room. It's just valuable. Like, if you don't have to go through a bank, sending all the documents in, working with, like, not that it's a negative, it's a lot of work to do it. And if you can avoid that, make it a win-win for the seller and the buyer, it's huge, very valuable.
Yeah. It's hard to explain the value to investors, the value of someone carrying a mortgage. You know what I mean? Because some sellers they're sticklers. They don't want to move on the price, and a lot of people don't want to pay full market value for a deal. But you do have to factor in the fact that it's extremely valuable for someone to carry that financing. So let's get into the deal specifically. So she sent you a spreadsheet with a few of the properties. So there's only one that you were really interested in.
Yeah, there was one that was in an older area of Edmonton that I wasn't too interested in that neighborhood. Tougher tenant demographic, tougher neighborhood, older, all of that. There's definitely one that I was very interested in. It was on the north side, sure neighborhood. Lots of work was done to it. So our first conversation was just through Kijiji messaging. Hey, this is what I have. I'm selling 2. I can send you a detailed sheet which had the asking price, the current rents, the average utilities, insurance costs, approximate cash flow, all of that. I was able to analyze both of those. They both look good as a conventional deal with 20% down. Had another conversation with the seller. Then we just went from there. The seller was awesome to deal with. Long-time investor. Very smart, RAIN member. Like, she was up. She knew what was going on. I had a fellow investor in Edmonton, Remy Noel. He was able to view the property for me.
Nice.
And with his expertise and his knowledge, he was able to say, yeah, it's a good deal. Pursue it. Property looks good. They've done tons of work to it. The siding's all been done. Yard is meticulous. 2012, they built triple car garage with 3 single bays. Very well done.
Well, that's awesome, considering you can rent out each individual bay, right? Each individual car garage. That's great.
Yeah, and that was a very big selling point. Was that garage, additional cash flow. 2 of the bays have been rented out to long-term tenants for 4+ years. Some older gentlemen that run a yard care business, and they keep their equipment there, and it's perfect setup.
Awesome. Say hi to Mom.
Hey, Mom. Following in your footsteps.
And Gabby says we look like brothers or cousins. So
yeah, I'm taking advantage of a couple weeks off. I don't have to shave. Doesn't happen.
Well, I left my job too, and that's why I'm growing my beard now. So it's a huge compliment, because I am very handsome. So
there you go. Thank you, Gabby.
So what was Okay, the seller is in our community, and obviously you
Yeah.
want to respect privacy. So I'll let you
Yeah.
talk as little or as much as you want to. But do you know why the investor reached out to your ad? Like there had to have been some motivation, right?
Some motivation. They did have a JV partner on this property. JV partner wanted to retire. They needed some money, or to kick off their retirement, they needed some money. And then the working partner, they wanted to move on to larger projects. So this was starting of like them divesting some of their portfolio.
Okay.
So that was the motivation. That's kind of how we started the conversation of how much money down do you need?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the JV partner wanted to retire, so there was definite number value there of what they needed so they could move on. And then the seller wanted to minimize their risk once we got into the AFS conversation. So there needed to be some down payment.
Right. Right. And do you mind sharing what that down payment amount was or percentage?
It was $50,000, which worked to 13% down.
Well, that's awesome. Not only did you get someone to carry the financing, you got it decreased from 20% down to 13%.
Yeah. So we had our initial conversations. I'd said, how do you want to sell? Do you want to just sell conventionally, or are you open to any alternative financing or creative financing? And she was the one that actually pitched that said, well, we've been hearing a lot about AFS lately. Do you know anything about it? Is this something that we can do? And I said, definitely. Like that took a lot of the legwork out right there. Where the seller knew about AFS, knew about Barry and Don, had heard Barry on the rain stage before. So then right then I was like, okay, let's see what we can do. I told them right off the bat that it probably would be better for them to just sell conventionally if they wanted all of their equity out, and then they could move on and totally have to worry about the property.
Of course. But they didn't agree?
No, they said, we're interested in AFS. Give us a few proposals. We'll go from there. So then from that point on, I proposed a deal with a lower percent down, say 10% down, on a, well, we first needed to figure out how much equity they had.
For sure.
Significant equity, like well into the six figures. It was operated as a rental for 10 plus years. Renovations were done, garage was built, so there's significant equity that they did have in this property. From that point, needed to come up with a term, an AFS term, which we matched to their current mortgage term, which was due in 2024. So it's just over a 4-year term.
Okay.
Back and forth a few times on the down payment amount between 10 and 15%. We negotiated it down to 13. And then we needed to come up with an interest rate that would work for the seller.
Right. So what was the underlying interest rate?
They had an underlying mortgage and an underlying HELOC. So they were about 45% loan to value on their existing financing. Once we determined the down payment and the interest rate, it allowed them to earn an interest rate spread on their current financing. So say their financing was at 3% on their mortgage and their HELOC, and we came up with an agreement that we would pay 4%. This isn't correct values, but close enough for explanation. So they're going to earn an interest rate spread on that. They're going to earn 1% on their current financing plus the interest rate on their equity.
Which should equate to about an extra $250, $300 a month, I'm assuming, in extra cash flow?
For them, they're probably going to cash flow around $500 a month passively.
Nice.
Being our bank.
I can't tell without the actual figures.
Yeah, it's
that's amazing. So
yeah,
you know they got to wait an extra
income. Possibly. They're going to earn a good income passively by being our bank and providing us financing. It might be a little less than operating as a rental, but it's totally hands off for them. They have no work required anymore. They put in the time on this property. They put in the time in other rentals. They've been long-time investors. Now they get to earn that passive income.
$500 a month is $6,000 a year over 4.5 years. We're talking about a little over $25,000, and not having any maintenance, repairs, vacancies, any of that stuff, and no tenants. So the amount of money that they, I mean, I don't know how much money they have left in equity. Well, how much, whatever their unpaid seller's equity is, let's say, $100,000. They just made a 25% return over 4 years for, completely passive. That's actually pretty decent. And they got a guaranteed price from you, and you're going to buy it in 4.5 years.
Yep, agreed upon price. That was the other thing we came to agreement with. They had a starting point of the purchase price. We went from there, and then once we agreed on everything, purchase price, interest rate, term length, and down payment, we were able to move forward. So they selling privately, they avoided realtor fees, which would have been in $15,000 range. They avoided their mortgage payout penalty, and they're still going to earn income from it, which I think is a big selling feature.
That's awesome.
They earn that right to earn that money.
I was going to ask a question. I went completely blank. So what's the exit strategy for this? I mean, is it you're turning it into a rental property, or?
It's rental property already. Main floor tenant staying. Again, main floor tenant's been there for just over 2 years. Wants to stay for 3 more. Her son is going to a school in the neighborhood. He started high school, doesn't want to disrupt his high school years. So they want to stay and enjoy it. Basement tenant moved out Saturday, so we're able to place a new tenant for November 1. Actively searching for that right now. Ben and Chris are actually in there today doing some work upstairs and downstairs from Honey Do It.
Nice.
Exit strategy. So in our AFS agreement, we came to a term that we are able to renew the AFS if both seller and buyer agree to it. So typically most AFSs, if it's a low to no equity deal, eventually that seller will want to be off title. Say you have 3 to 5 years, after that you're done. This one we were able to come up to agreement that if in the benefit of the seller and the buyer, if we want to renew for another 5 years, we have that clause available to us. So we may never have to go to a bank to get conventional financing.
Right. So you'll just eventually potentially just adjust the interest rate or the purchase price so that it fits. So it's a win-win for the seller and you. Yeah,
just renew in it'll be December 2024.
Nice.
Yeah, we'll continue to operate as a rental, and it's going to be a long-term buy and hold in our portfolio.
And if they're not open to renewing in 4.5 years, is your plan to keep it or to sell it?
No, we'll keep it. Yep.
It's a great property. I'm assuming.
What's that?
It's a good property.
It's a great property. Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's in great shape. They took care of it over the 10 plus years. Major renovations. The roof's been replaced. New furnace, hot water tank. Like all the major stuff has been done. With the triple car garage, big backyard. It's on a major bus route. It's close to major roadways, so it's strong property in a good area.
This all sounds extremely easy. Like you had a Kijiji ad, she called you up and said, "Hey, I want to sell it. Have you ever heard of agreement for sale?" You're like, "Oh yeah, I've loved agreement for sale. I do it all the time. Let's sign the paperwork." Was it that easy, or was there a lot more in between?
So our first contact was early July. We didn't close until October 1, and it wasn't easy. When I first tried to understand the deal, I was like, how are we going to make this work with the amount of equity? I just couldn't get that wrapped around my head yet. So it took a while. Had to talk to a few other investors of how we could structure this deal that would make it work. And honestly, like I said, it's probably better for you guys if you want your money out, just sell it outright and just walk away. So yeah, it was definite, probably 6 to 8 weeks of negotiation and talking back and forth and what could work. We had a home inspection in early September. The Edmonton rush through July and August, Barry was backed up with deals, so that took a bit of time to work through, and he was able to finally look at our deal and move forward. But overall, it wasn't too bad of a deal. When you're dealing with an investor who's been in the community for a long time, they know what it takes, and it does take time. You have to work small little details.
Did this investor trust you right away? Like, was she just extremely open? Because it doesn't sound like she was, I don't like using the word desperate, but I'm going to say desperate. Doesn't sound like she was desperate. Doesn't sound like she was overly motivated, other than the fact that she wanted to kind of help the JV partner move on. But it seems like the transition was very easy. The conversations were very easy.
Yeah, it was. From that first Kijiji ad, we messaged on Kijiji, and we had a few phone calls, emails back and forth. We didn't meet in person until early September, so it was almost 2 months that we had been chatting back and forth through different means before we actually met in person. And the day we met in person was actually the home inspection. So I think that know, like, and trust was developed off those few initial conversations on the phone. I trusted her right off the bat. Just she told me her story and knew people in the community and longtime investor, and right then and there, like, that establishes credibility.
Right.
So I knew she was serious. I know she'd seriously consider the deal, and then we just went from there.
Was there any, again, as much or as little as you want to say, but was there any snags along the way? Maybe something that you didn't agree with or she didn't agree with that you guys kind of had trouble with getting through, or was it?
No, one snag was just the delay with the lawyer's office. They were just super slammed. Barry had like 20 plus deals closing in September, early October. So that delayed a little bit. Snags, not really. Once we determine the price, most AFS deals, you may not get an appraisal or an inspection. I opted to do both. I knew the approximate value, so I knew we were very close to what the appraisal would come in at. And just the inspection was due diligence on my behalf, knowing that it would be a long-term buy and hold. If there was anything major, I wanted to know about it right away. But overall, it went fairly. And once we were able to agree, it took a bit of time negotiating because she had to converse with JV partners.
Right.
But overall, say it was close to 2.5, maybe 3 months of working on this deal to actually get it to the point where we could close.
They're never fast. Unless you've got someone who's like, take the keys right now, I gotta go. They're never fast. They always. And
they had like significant equity in the property. It was long-term rental. Like, it meant a lot to them, this property. So they wanted to protect their risk. They wanted to know that I was actually going to do what I said I was going to do, that I was going to close and they would be protected. We were able to, even before it got to the lawyers, we were able to go through the AFS buyer and seller agreement, like the large AFS document, and hash out a lot of those details before it even got to the lawyer. And then we were able to incorporate a lot of those into the AFS schedule that would work for us. So they needed to minimize their risk. I needed to minimize mine. And then we were able to make it work.
And you mentioned again the fact that the seller had a significant amount of equity. And most investors or creative investors just believe, and I'm one of them. I say it all the time. It's very hard to do deals with with sellers that have a significant amount of equity because there's not as much motivation there. You from the beginning said, hey, seller, why don't you just sell? You can get all your money now. It'd be so much easier. And they were still open to it. So it's great to hear stories like this because it proves that, you know, with every scenario, with every situation, there's always a way to make it work. You took their situation, you took their problem they were looking to have solved, and you built an offer around that fulfilled what they needed and also fulfilled what you needed. I think what do they call that? Win-win.
There it is. No, we definitely made it win-win. For us, our motivation for buying is we wanted to keep growing our portfolio. We wanted a legally suited property in Edmonton. We didn't want to eat up any bank financing. They wanted to sell, let their JV partner continue on into retirement. They wanted to look at some larger projects. Worked out well. Once you come to those initial agreements, and then it just kind of starts rolling, and then it's like, okay, we got something going here. I wasn't going to give it up. Like AFSing a legally suited property, that in itself is
hard. They're very rare.
Yeah, that's why I was blown away. We were able to get it, so I wasn't going to let it go.
And again, a lot of people think that it's not possible with lots of equity. A lot of people, they kind of get discouraged when they put an ad up and they get no responses. But had someone in Edmonton had the same ad as you up, they might have called them instead of you. But you were the one that actually took the time to post it.
And it's very basic. You don't have to overthink it. You don't have to have complex marketing or anything like that. Like it was 3 or 4 lines in a Kijiji ad, no picture. Just, hey, you're looking to sell. And there was lots of investors that had contacted me, and they had like a diverse portfolio. Some were strictly townhouses, some were condos and townhouses, or just single family homes. Some were just homeowners that were moving. Like I've been working remotely. I got to move now, or I'm relocating to BC. I'm moving back to Ontario. I want to rent. I don't want to own anymore. Like there's a wide array of sellers that are out there that have problems or issues, and they need to sell their properties.
And you have a solution.
Yeah.
There's so many for relocations. So many, especially in the Edmonton area.
Yeah, still, we're trying to work on another one. Young lady that has almost no equity, been working out of Edmonton, has to be transferred to Calgary, working remotely for now, but needs out, doesn't have much equity, can't afford a realtor. So there's all kinds. Like once you start talking and you get into and talking with sellers, you'll find all kinds of situations.
That's awesome, man. And so are you still posting on Kijiji, obviously? You still have your ads up?
No. Slowed down for a bit now. Main focus was to get this deal closed. Like it took a good amount of time. And then, I'm just kind of holding a holding pattern for now till we get that basement suite rented, and planning a new garage build on another property in Edmonton right now for the spring.
Nice.
Focusing on that and just some family stuff at the moment.
You have a newborn. Yeah.
Yeah.
Priority.
Exactly. So it's a good deal.
And so once you get all that stuff done, your garage and everything else, and you turn the taps back on, like what are your goals long-term with these strategies? Are you planning on using, this strategy again in the future?
Yeah, I will try again to find a seller that has a legally suited home. I'm going to focus on AFS, pairing it with JV partners. From there, big focus is the Edmonton market. Edmonton's strong. Like I said earlier, there's good cash flow, there's good properties. It's a diverse economy, so it's strong. Back, and it's going to get better.
Cool. Before we kind of wind things down, there is a couple questions here. And
Sure.
one was from Alana. She asked, "Are both JV partners on title? Does that matter in
Yes.
this case?" So the pre-existing arrangement.
Yep. There was it was a husband and wife, and then the JV side was a husband and wife as well. So there was 4 names on title.
Okay, so they qualified together.
Yeah.
And so both parties were on board, and both parties probably signed the agreement for sale, right?
Yeah. They signed the purchase contract, the AFS schedule, so 4 parties, and then my wife and I. So there was some delay with that, just discussing with JV partners, explaining the arrangement, what the agreement for sale was, how the deal was going to proceed, the structure. And yeah, everybody signed for it.
And we got one last question, unless anybody else comes up with that anymore. And that was, again, from Alana. She was asking earlier, what was the criteria you were using to weed sellers out? So when, people are contacting you through your ad, like, how are you determining which ones are good and which ones aren't?
So most people would tell me what type of property they were selling. If it was houses or condos, I was right away like, nope, not focusing on that. I wanted older bungalows that could be suited or already suited properties. And I was targeting investors that were selling. I had that in my ad. Are you a real estate investor that's looking to sell your portfolio? Are you a tired landlord? Something along those lines that would target landlords. But my focus was legally suited homes or properties that could be suited.
Interesting. So why specifically investors and landlords and not homeowners?
Well, I was finding I could pitch the AFS probably to landlords or investors that were selling if they wanted to still earn some passive income. My agreement, it's been a long-term buy and hold. Most investors probably have significant equity. Maybe they don't want to do anything else with that equity. They're going to sell it and maybe just put it in a bank account. Well, they're not going to earn any money doing that.
Right.
Financing, I'll pay you an interest rate on that equity and you will earn money by doing nothing, by being the bank.
And an investor is going to see the value in that, as opposed to someone who's not savvy with real estate investing might not see the value in an extra 1% on their board funds, right?
No, and it may say it's a 1% spread on the interest rate, because on the left side, the bank has the mortgage for the seller. There is an underlying mortgage in a HELOC. That's on the left side of the wall. On the right side of the wall is your agreement with an AFS buyer. So they will earn an interest rate spread if they have an underlying mortgage, and then they'll earn that full interest rate on any unpaid equity.
Looking back on it now, is there anything you would have done differently? I had to ask.
No, overall, it went very well. It took a lot of time, like 2.5 months, 3 months. Like it's not a fast process. Trying to rush through it. The AFS document, once you read that, it's massive. There's a lot of leads in it. Even working through the AFS schedule, they were investors. I'm an investor. You need to take your time and understand what's in that contract and what's in that AFS schedule. So like the due diligence has to be done. You need to know the location of the property. Right away, I ran the numbers on it as a conventional sale with 20% down, with bank financing at 3.5% to make sure it would still cash flow. And then you run the numbers as an AFS purchase, it's still going to cash flow. It's probably a pretty good deal. And then sellers are going to provide financing. And that's invaluable. Like when you go to a bank, the qualification documents you have to send for what you have in assets, liabilities, employment letter, all that. The qualification that I did with the seller was we provided letters of employment and a credit score. It's pretty straightforward, pretty basic. Quick documents that said, okay, yeah, your credit score is high enough, and yeah, you do have stable income. You are going to pay this agreement out.
There's some really great takeaways from this interview, and thank you so much for doing it, Tyson.
Thanks for the opportunity.
I think one of the ones that that we weren't really expecting was the fact that, not only can you use this strategy to find deals and to create value in getting someone to carry a mortgage, getting into a deal for less money down, but also you can use this on the other side. There's a savvy investor on the other side who had a problem and was in a situation that, had she known this, she would have come up with this on her own. But thank God, you came along and was able to propose that. But I personally have had properties where, like, I didn't know really what to do with it, and I used the agreement for sale strategy to sell.
Yes.
And you can create a lot of extra cash flow every month and get a pretty decent return. So
it preserves a lot of their equity. If there is no realtor fees or mortgage payout penalties, like, there was still 4 years left on their mortgage. So, like, they could have had substantial payout penalties. Say between those two fees, you could have been 20,000, 25,000 just in fees. Property. So they're going to preserve that 25 grand, say, that's still in their pocket, and they're earning money passively.
And I don't, we don't throw around win-win loosely. Like, it is an actual win-win. Like, no one lost here. Like, the seller didn't lose more than you because, now they got to carry financing. No, like, they won as well.
No, and that's the other thing too is, we paid a bit more than the appraised value, but I was 100% okay with paying above market value because they are providing financing. They had a number they needed to get. They needed a down payment they needed to get, and
it still worked for you.
Bank like that, you can't put a value on that. I don't think. Like, it's huge.
There's so many different investors in our community at different stages. Some people are at a selling stage, some people at a buying stage. So it just shows that, learning these strategies, by knowing them, you'll recognize opportunities. And there's so many opportunities for people to work together to help people out and help people in at the same time. I love it. I love all the different ways you can use it. It's exciting to hear about stories like this.
Yeah, and once you get into it, you analyze AFS deals, you can see what's out there. Like me, when I first saw this deal, I was like, wow, it's going to have to be a 20% down. Like, how can I make an AFS work in the 6 figures of equity? Like, how can you make this work? You just structure it like a conventional mortgage, and they pay down their underlying mortgage and their HELOC. We're paying down our AFS at the same time. The end of the term, there's a number that was pulled from the amortization schedule, and that's what will be paid out. It does take time once you're getting into the deals to figure it out. That is an investor. You're coming across those deals. Take the time, reach out to other investors. They will walk you through it. They'll talk you through it.
Super cool, man. Well, congratulations on the deal and congratulations on the little one.
Thank you.
Good luck with everything, you got going on with the garage and obviously filling that tenant. Thanks for coming on and sharing this deal.
Thank you, Wayne, for the opportunity, and same to Barry and Donna McGuire for opening up this creative side of real estate.
All right. Bye-bye, Tyson.
All right, Wayne. Take care.